The day I married Jungkook was nothing like the fairy tales I had once dreamed of as a child. There were no heartfelt vows, no loving gazes exchanged, and certainly no promises of forever. It was a contract signed and sealed between two families who needed each other. He needed a wife to maintain his pristine reputation, and I needed an escape from the controlling grasp of my parents. Jungkook was cold and distant. He barely acknowledged my existence unless necessary, and in return, I kept to myself, living like a shadow in his grand house. Days passed, weeks turned into months, and though our conversations were minimal, something subtle began to shift. I noticed how he started waiting for me to have dinner together instead of eating alone, how his fingers would brush against mine just a little longer when he handed me something, how his eyes softened when he looked at me as if I were becoming more than just a legal obligation. Just when I thought maybe, just maybe this marriage could become something real, she arrived. The warm glow of the dining room light softened the edge of Jungkook's usually sharp expression. He was sitting across from you, his sleeves rolled up, hand resting beside the untouched glass of water. Tonight felt different. It wasn't just another evening spent in awkward silence, fulfilling the obligations of your contract marriage. You had cooked tonight. Nothing extravagant, just a simple meal you had been practicing. It wasn't perfect, but it was yours, and for the first time, you found yourself anticipating his reaction. You hesitated before asking, "Does it taste alright?" Jungkook, who had been chewing thoughtfully, glanced up, his gaze softened as he swallowed. You didn't have to go through the trouble. His voice was quieter than usual, carrying none of the distant coldness you were used to. But it's good, better than I expected. A strange warmth settled in your chest. He didn't compliment things easily. He was blunt, straightforward, and most of the time emotionally unreadable. Yet tonight he had said something kind, meant it. Even it was small thing, a few words, but they mattered. You allowed yourself to smile faintly, looking down at your plate as you picked at your food. I'm still learning. I didn't cook much before, but I guess I just wanted to try. Jungkook hummed in acknowledgement, nodding slowly as he took another bite. There was something about the atmosphere tonight that felt different, something almost peaceful. It's way better for first time. You smiled, but then the doorbell rang. Both of you turned towards the sound. It was past 11, too late for visitors. Jungkook's brows furrowed as he pushed back his chair, standing up. You followed him to the entrance, your footsteps light against the polished floor. When he opened the door, the cold night air seeped in, carrying the faint scent of rain, and there she was, Hana. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen and red, as if she had been crying for hours. Her fingers clutched the strap of her overweight bag so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. The moment she saw Jungkook, her lips trembled. Jungkook. Her voice was barely above a whisper, raw and broken. Hana, what are you doing here? Is everything alright? He asked, getting worried for her. She shook her head. He cheated on me. A heavy silence filled the space between them. You could see the way her body trembled, her chest rising and falling unevenly as she fought back more tears. Jungkook's jaw tensed, his hand twitched at his side before he finally spoke. His voice was low. Come inside. He stepped back as he guided her in. She looked fragile, completely shattered, and at that moment, all he felt was pity. Because what happened to her was cruel, being betrayed by the one you love, losing everything in a single moment. It was a pain you couldn't even begin to imagine. You gave her a glass of water. Her hands were trembling. She was crying for God knows how long. She looked up at you, her lips still trembling. Thank you. You offered her a small nod as she took a sip, trying to calm herself. Jungkook sat across from her, leaning forward, her forearms resting on his knees. His voice was softer now, but urgent. Tell me everything. Hana let out a shaky breath, gripping the glass tighter. I knew something was off for a while. He was always on his phone, always late coming home. I asked him about it, but he kept brushing me off. And then tonight, I walked in and she squeezed her eyes shut, her whole body shaking. He wasn't even sorry, Jungkook. He just looked at me like I was nothing, like I was the problem. Jungkook's jaw tightened. That jerk. She sniffled, shaking her head. I left immediately. I couldn't. I couldn't stay there, Jungkook. I have no family to go to, no one else to turn to. I didn't know where else to go. Jungkook exhaled sharply, his eyes dark with anger and something else, pain for his friend. Without hesitation, he spoke. You don't have to go anywhere. You can stay here for as long as you need. Your fingers curled slightly at your sides. It was obvious he cared deeply for her. She was his best friend, someone who had known him long before you ever stepped into his life. And seeing her like this, shattered and lost, it was only natural that you wanted to help. You swallowed, ignoring the strange discomfort settling in your chest. I'll get the guest room ready, you said, keeping your voice neutral. Hana turned to you, eyes still glassy with tears. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And you meant it when you nodded, because at that moment, all you felt was sympathy. You didn't know that the woman you were feeling bad for, the woman you were welcoming into your home, would soon try to take what was yours, and you had no idea just how much things were about to change. Days started passing, and now there was another presence in the house except you and Jungkook. At first, Hana kept to herself, but soon she started settling in like she belonged. It began with little things, offering to set the table, cleaning up after meals, but then gradually her presence became more pronounced. She started waking up early to prepare Jungkook's breakfast before you even made it to the kitchen. The smell of freshly brewed coffee and warm toast greeted you every morning, but it wasn't your doing. She packed his lunch as if it was the most natural thing to do, slipping seamlessly into a role that wasn't hers to take. Those slow, comforting mornings which were bringing you and Jungkook a bit close every day were now gone. One morning you walked downstairs and paused at the side before you. Hana stood by the dining table, neatly placing a packed lunch into Jungkook's briefcase. She zipped it up with practiced ease, a small smile playing on her lips. Your hands tightened into fists at your sides before you took a steadying breath. You don't have to do that. Your voice was calm but firm. Hana turned, her expression unreadable. Then she let out a soft laugh and waved a hand dismissively. It's nothing. I used to do this for him back in college. Old habits die hard. You swallowed down the bitter taste in your mouth. Right, old habits. Jungkook walked in just then, buttoning the cuffs of his dress shirt. He barely glanced at either of you as he picked up the briefcase. Thanks, Hana. Your heart sank at his indifference. Hana grinned. Of course, you're always in such a rush, so I figured I would help. You stared at Jungkook, waiting for something, anything, but he only nodded, his focus already on his phone. You looked away. I'll make breakfast. No need, Vian, Hana said, gesturing to the neatly plated meal on the table. I already did. You forced a smile. Right. Jungkook sat down, grabbing a fork. Eat with me. You hesitated. I'm not really hungry. He finally looked up, then brows slightly furrowed. You sure? You nodded. I'll eat later. Hana placed a glass of juice in front of Jungkook, her movements casual, but to you it felt like an intrusion. I should go, you muttered, turning on your heel before he could say anything else. That evening, as you both sat at the dinner table, silence stretched between you. The tension in the air was suffocating. The clinking of chopsticks against ceramic was the only sound filling the space. Jungkook finally broke the silence. You have been quiet lately. You force yourself to shrug. I'm always quiet. His chopsticks paused mid-air before he put them down. Not like this. You took a slow bite of your food, chewing deliberately. I've just been tired. Jungkook studied you, his gaze searching. Tired or avoiding me? You let out a short laugh, shaking your head. Why would I avoid you? That's what I would like to know. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed over his chest. If something is wrong, just tell me. Nothing is wrong. He exhaled sharply. Vian, come on. You pushed your food around on your plate, feeling your patience slipping. I just don't have anything to say. Jungkook's jaw tightened. You used to. You finally looked at him, meeting his gaze head on. Things change. His fingers tapped against the table. Because of Hana? Your stomach twisted at how easily he brought her up. That means he noticed. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. You scoffed. So now I can't even be tired without you thinking it's about her. Jungkook's brows furrowed. That's not what I said. It's what you implied. He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Wine, if something is bothering you, I would rather you just say it instead of acting like this. You pushed your chair back, standing up. I'm done talking about this. Jungkook's voice was quieter this time. I just want to understand you. You hesitated, gripping the back of your chair. Maybe you should stop trying. The words hung between you both, heavy and unspoken. Jungkook's expression darkened, but he didn't stop you as you walked away, leaving your half-eaten meal behind. Days passed, and you withdrew further into yourself. You stayed in your room longer, finding solace in its quiet walls. It was easier to pretend everything was fine when you weren't forced to see them together, when you didn't have to watch the way Hana settled so effortlessly into your life, into your home, into your husband's routine. Jungkook wasn't being overly affectionate with her, he was just being himself, kind and caring. But that kindness, the same warmth you had slowly started to crave, now felt like it belonged to someone else. The sight of her making him laugh, of her moving around as if she had always belonged here, made your stomach churn with something unrecognizable. You told yourself it wasn't jealousy, it couldn't be after all. This wasn't a real marriage. At least, that's what you reminded yourself every time your heart ached, and so you started staying in your room more, only coming out when necessary. You skipped breakfast, waiting until you were sure Jungkook had left for work before stepping into the kitchen. At dinner, you ate quickly, avoiding conversation, retreating back to the one place where you didn't have to see her at his side. Jungkook noticed. He started coming home earlier, looking around as if searching for something or someone. When he realized you weren't around, his expression would tighten, but he never said anything. He knocked on your door more often now, calling your name softly, waiting, but each time you found yourself pressing your back against the door, swallowing the lump in your throat, unable to respond. What could you even say? That you felt like an outsider in your own marriage? That you felt ridiculous for even feeling this way when you weren't his real wife? That you had no right to expect anything from him? One evening, a knock echoed against your door once again. Vian. His voice was quiet, cautious. You hesitated, staring at the closed door. You could pretend you were asleep or ignore him like you had done the past few days, but this time, something in his tone made you pause. Vian, I know you are in there. He let out a sigh. Please open the door. You slowly stood up, hesitating before unlocking it. Jungkook stood in the doorway, his brows furrowed as he studied you. You didn't come out for dinner. I wasn't hungry. You forced a small smile, hoping it was enough to end the conversation. Jungkook didn't move, his eyes searched your face, his concern growing. Are you sick? You looked at him before shaking your head. No. Then why do you keep avoiding me? His voice was firm but not unkind. You swallowed, lowering your gaze. I'm not avoiding you. You barely talk to me anymore. You barely even look at me. A silence stretched between you. You could feel the weight of his word pressing down on your chest, making it harder to breathe. It doesn't matter, Jungkook. Your voice was barely above a whisper. This was never a real marriage to begin with. His jaw tightened. From where this thing came? Why are you suddenly talking about all this? Your fingers curled into fist. Why was he pushing this? Did he want you to admit how much it hurt? That you wished things were different? That you wanted to be someone he looked at, not just out of duty, but because he wanted to? You turned away. You should go. But Jungkook didn't move. His expression darkened with something unreadable, frustration flickering in his eyes. Why? Before he could say anything else, laughter echoed from the living room. You looked past him and saw Hana leaning against the couch, laughing at something on her phone. It was an innocent moment, but to you it felt like a dagger straight through your chest. You forced yourself to look away, to not care. She wasn't that innocent. She was doing the same thing her husband's mistress did. Because she knew Jungkook and you are not married for life, and maybe she was trying to make her way to his heart. But fortunately, Jungkook wasn't seeing her that way. She was just a friend for him, more like a sister whom he was helping because she has been through a heartbreak and had nowhere to go. Jungkook must have sensed the shift in your look because he turned around, his brows pulling together as he watched Hana. Then his gaze flickered back to you and something in his expression changed. Before you could escape back into your room, his hand caught your wrist. Wait. You tensed but didn't move away. His grip was firm but gentle, his thumb brushing against your skin absent-mindedly. Is it because of Hana? He asked quietly. Are you not happy because she's here? You swallowed hard, looking away. You didn't want to answer. You didn't even know if you had the right to feel this way. After all, this wasn't a real marriage, was it? What place did you have to be upset? Why? His voice was softer now, more insistent. Talk to me. You hesitated, then exhaled shakily. It's not her fault, but I feel like she's taking over everything. I can't do anything anymore. She's around you all the time. Jungkook's hold on your wrist loosened slightly, but he didn't let go. I can't even cook for you anymore. I can't talk to you without her being there. It's like I don't belong here. His brows furrowed. Of course you belong here. You let out a bitter chuckle. Do I? Jungkook's lips parted as if to argue, but you shook your head. This was never real to begin with, Jungkook. I don't have any right to feel like this. I don't have the right to ask for more. His grip on you tightened again, his expression unreadable. You think that? You forced yourself to meet his gaze. Isn't it the truth? One day we have to separate. We'll be strangers once again. Silence stretched between you, then without another word, he pulled you forward, slowly, deliberately, until there was almost no space. Jungkook, I don't like this. I don't like you shutting yourself away like this. I don't like you thinking you don't have the right to feel anything. I don't know why you started feeling that, but now you're more than what you think of me. Your breath hitched. Before you could say anything else, he let go of your wrist, his fingers brushing against your hand before finally falling away. Come, eat with me, he said quietly. You hesitated, but something in his gaze made you nod slowly, and for the first time in days, you stepped out of your room. The next morning, Jungkook called Hana to talk about something. He sat across from her in the living room, his expression calm yet firm. You stood beside him, your heart pounding, unsure of how this conversation would unfold. Hana had always been a presence in his life, someone familiar, someone who once held a significant place in his past, but now everything was different. She looked between the two of you before fully shifting his eyes on him. What happened, Jungkook? What you wanted to talk about so early in the morning? Jungkook took a deep breath before speaking. Hana, Jungkook began, his voice gentle but resolute. I've arranged an apartment for you. It's a nice place, fully furnished and close to the city center. You can start fresh there. Hana's fingers curled slightly on her lap, but she nodded, her gaze flickering towards you. There was something knowing in her eyes, an understanding that didn't need words. She had seen the shift, the silent battle you had been fighting within yourself, and now the decision had he made. Oh, okay. I appreciate everything you have done for me, Jungkook, she said softly, forcing a small smile. But I understand. I really do. Jungkook gave her a small nod. I'll still support you financially and however you need, but I think it's best if you have your own space. She looked between the two of you again, exhaling before rising to her feet. I should go back then. He watched as she walked towards the guest room, disappearing behind the door. The weight in your chest hadn't fully lifted yet, but it was easing. You weren't sure how to process this. Was this relief, guilt, or something more complex? Jungkook turned to you then, his dark eyes locking onto yours. Come with me. He led you to the balcony where the cool morning air wrapped around you both. The silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was charged, heavy with emotions neither of you had spoken aloud. You really thought I didn't notice? He finally said. His voice was softer now. You swallowed. Notice what? How you started pulling away, how you barely looked at me anymore, how you forced yourself to act like it didn't bother you that she was here. You looked away, but he stepped closer. Vian. You inhaled sharply, feeling his warmth so close to yours. I didn't think I had the right to say anything. We are not a real couple, Jungkook. I had no claim. Stop that. His voice was firm, his hands reaching for yours. This marriage might not have started the way it was supposed to, but that doesn't mean it's not real, not to me. Your heart stopped for a moment, your breath hitching. I love you. I've been in love with you for longer than I even realized, and I can't keep watching you hold yourself back because you think you don't deserve to feel this way. Tears burned at the back of your eyes. Jungkook, no more holding back, Vian. He whispered, lifting a hand to cup your cheek. Tell me you feel something too. You exhaled shakily. I do. I have for a while now. A slow, relieved smile stretched across his lips before he leaned in, pressing a soft, lingering kiss to your forehead. And just like that, the weight that had been suffocating you finally disappeared. You weren't just his wife on paper anymore, you were his in every way that mattered.